Today's talk is called College 101, Making Sense of College Talk. College is a time when you're going to learn all kinds of new terminology and new ideas and thoughts, not just in the classroom, but just in the way that college itself works. And a lot of times, the folks who will be talking to you from admissions office or the financial aid office or advisors or so forth are going to talk to you as if you know what all these terms mean when they may be really unfamiliar to you. So today we're just going to go through some basic ideas that go along with going to college, and you'll get a sense of how to proceed and what's expected of you. The very first step is an application form. This is your entrance into college. It's the first thing that will make contact with the college that you're interested in going to. And the application is simply a document. It's a form, and you can fill it out in the paper version or you can fill it out online. Most colleges have online applications now. And it gives you a chance to introduce yourself and who you are and some idea about who you are as a student to a prospective college. Now, you can turn in as many college applications as you like. You're not obligated to go to a school just because. Okay, we're going to talk about the steps and the pieces of documentation that you're going to need in order to apply to West Georgia Technical College. The first thing you're going to need is your application form, and you can get one of these in person through the admissions office, and it's a piece of paper form that you can fill out, or you can do this online. The next thing is an application fee. It costs $25 to apply to West Georgia Technical College, but as a GED student in our program, you can get a fee waiver voucher from your auditor, and then you won't have to pay that $25. There are other ways to get that $25 waived as well. If you go to an open house, whether that's in person or a virtual open house meeting, you can also apply for free at that time, and sometimes there'll be other occasions throughout the course of the semester that will allow you to apply for free. You'll also need an ID verifying that you are lawfully present in the United States. Most people use a Georgia driver's license or a driver's license from another state, but you can also use a permanent residence card, anything like that that allows you to be in the United States. You'll also need a copy of your transcript. This is your official score sheet from your GED test verifying that you have in fact passed all the sections of the GED. You will receive this along with a diploma in the mail from the TCSG, which is the Technical College System of Georgia, within about 3 or 4 weeks after you finish passing the GED test. And there are also some other pieces of information inside this envelope that you're going to get from the TCSG. Another thing that will be in that envelope is a GED Hope voucher. And this will allow you to have $500 to apply towards your education because you've graduated from an adult education program in the state of Georgia. And so what I typically suggest that students do is to take that whole envelope with all the pieces of paper in it to the admissions office in person and let them take care of it for you from that point. That way you can be sure they received it. And you can also make sure that they are able to make scans or copies of your documentation, and then you'll have the rest of it to take home with you. That way you don't have to order a separate copy of your diploma or your transcript in order for you to have a copy and also to share with the admissions office. That way you can also make sure that the financial aid department gets that Hope GED voucher that's inside the envelope. I have students on a regular basis call me up a month into the school semester saying, I don't remember getting that voucher and I don't think the financial aid says they don't have it. So make sure that you just take that whole envelope with you to the admissions office and make sure that the financial aid people get a copy of that GED Hope voucher so that you can apply that towards your tuition. Another change that has happened fairly recently is that your GED scores will count as your standardized test scores to enter West Georgia Technical College. You do not have to take the AccuPlacer test. While you're preparing your application, I want to point out to you a really, really important section of that application, Section 3. This is where you're being asked what your program of study is. Now, a program of study is essentially your field of interest, the thing that you want to concentrate on while you're in college, and that may be something like cosmetology or welding or psychology. And so you're going to list it there on the line that says program of study, but you also need to indicate what level, a degree, diploma, certificate, or courses only. Now, the reason this is important is that certain programs and certain levels of study will determine what kind of financial aid you are eligible for. Now, this is not a permanent selection. Everybody knows that you may need to take a class or two before you decide whether or not it's really a good fit for you. But you have to put something on your application, and it will become the basis for what kind of financial aid you get. So pay attention to this, and we're going to briefly talk about what this means here in this presentation today. Concept to you. A program of study is how you prepare for a particular kind of job. So, for instance, if you want to be an accountant, then you are going to choose the accounting program of study. Or if you want to go into welding, you're going to choose welding and joining technology or something like that. Okay? So, program of study means that field of interest that you want to pursue. You can get some advice from an advisor on campus about how to choose that, but I'm going to give you some advice as well today, some general advice. Be sure to check out whatever is the latest schedule for advisors on your campus. It's a little bit different from campus to campus, and each semester those hours are going to change ever so slightly based on who's available to do the advising. So to do that, there's also an online advising option that you can go to. If you go to West Georgia Technical College's website and just type in the search bar advising, you'll be taken straight to that page where you can find that information. So once you have decided what area interests you, whether it's welding or nursing or automotive tech or cosmetology, whatever, then you may need to decide how much education you need in that particular field. The sort of lowest base level, least amount of time, amount of study that you can do is called a certificate program. And this is generally only about a semester or two worth of classes. It may take you between 3 to 9 months to complete, and it usually has about 12 to 30 course hours. We'll talk about what course hours are in just a minute. And so that's the simplest, most basic, quick, and easy level of advanced education that you can get. Building upon that, you can go next to a diploma area, and that's going to be about 40 to 60 hours, which translates to about 2 to 4 semesters if you are going full time. Now, if you're going part-time and only taking a couple of classes at a time, it will take you longer. Okay, so let's just look at the description that I've put here for these two levels really quickly. In the certificate program, you're going to learn specific skills, like for instance, if you were in air conditioning, heating and air conditioning, you would learn specifically how to install an air conditioner would be one class, and how to maintain an air conditioner might be another class. And so it's that kind of hands-on specific skill that you'll be learning in a certificate program. If you go for a diploma program, you're going to learn a whole host of skills that are associated with your field. For instance, you may learn how to install and maintain heaters and install and maintain air conditioners. You may learn how to do it in existing structures or in a new build. And so you're going to learn a whole bunch of different things about heating and air conditioning. And you're also going to take 2 or 3 basic general education classes, like 1 English and 1 math and 1 how to be a college student. We'll look at that in just a minute too. The next level that you might want to consider is an associate's degree. It takes about the same amount of time as a diploma, about 2 years. Sometimes it takes a little more depending on the field of study. And it is going to have a lot more academic type classes, and I'll show you that in just a minute. The next level that you might attain is a bachelor's degree. Most people are really familiar with that. That's what we call a 4-year degree, is a bachelor's degree, and it typically takes 4 years. In fact, most bachelor's degrees have gotten so complicated these days that a lot of times they take closer to 5 years to complete. The next level beyond that is a master's degree. If you want to do something semi-professional, like be a financial accountant, or be a minister, or be a really important businessman, you may want to get an MBA or an MDiv or an MFA. So if you want to go even further, you can even get a PhD and get something called a doctorate. Now, being a doctor does not necessarily mean that you practice medicine. That's an MD, but you could also get something like a PhD, which means you're essentially an expert in a field of study. All right, so let's look at a real life example of the difference between these three levels that you can get at the technical college. The first level is that certificate program, and if you were interested in criminal justice, you could get a certificate in criminal justice called a crime scene fundamentals certificate by taking just these 4 courses. You see them listed there: CISM 2201, CRJU 1010, etc. And so you would take these very specific classes having to do with what to do at a crime scene. Okay. If you wanted to have a broader experience in understanding criminal justice, then you would go for the diploma. There's a diploma in criminal justice technology, and you'll see that there are 4 classes listed there that are more academic. There's one called Interpersonal Relations and Professional Development, EMPL 1000, and that's sort of a general how to be a good employee kind of course. And then you've got an English course and a math course, and then something called a first-year student seminar, which is a kind of a how to be a college student class. And then look at all the classes listed below that. CISM 2201, you'll see that is in common with the certificate program, right? The CRJU 1010, again, it's a duplicate of the certificate program. So you see a pattern here. The diploma includes all the stuff in the certificate plus more, and that's why it takes longer. But if you finish a diploma, you're a more well-rounded, more educated person, and you can usually apply for a job that's more demanding and gets a little better pay. And so you'll see that when you go out into the work world and are looking up jobs and what their requirements are, you'll see that jobs that require a certificate only will generally pay less than ones that require a diploma, and on up the scale it goes. That's not a hard and fast rule, but that's typically the pattern that you will see. If you want to go for an associate's degree, you can also get one of those in criminal justice, and you'll see that it has a lot of the same classes, but it's got all these sort of general education classes that we typically associate with college education, things like English composition 1 and 2, college algebra, statistics, Spanish, world history, political science, psychology, etc. This is where you end up taking all those academic type classes, plus another 18 hours of criminal justice classes as well. So if you want to compare the diploma and the associate's degree, you'll see they have a total of about the same number of classes, but the diploma is more specific to criminal justice, those hands-on type courses, whereas the associate degree is more focused on the academic classes. Now, why would you choose the associate's degree over the diploma? Well, if you think you might like to eventually get a 4-year degree in criminal justice, which will, be your entrance into even more advanced jobs out there in the work world at some point in time. If you think you might eventually like to get a 4-year degree, then the associate's degree is the one you want to pursue. It's the step toward a bachelor's degree, whereas a diploma is not. Some of the classes that you take at the diploma or certificate level may or may not actually apply to a 4-year degree, because they're just kind of considered at a different level. Like, for instance, that Fundamentals of English 1, that English 1010 that you see in the orange block there, that will not apply to a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree. It's simply not considered college level English. And so if you took this class, it's great for the diploma itself, but it will not translate into more education at some point in time. It's a sort of a dead end in that regard. All right, so associate's degree students do take these about 40 hours of general study courses, and then they're going to take some major concentration courses. If you go on for a 4-year degree, you'll take even more of these major concentration courses. Those are like more criminal justice classes, right? And you'll also have some room in a 4-year degree to take some elective courses, which means some courses that you just pick because you're interested in, and they may be in a completely different field altogether. You may be studying criminal justice, but you may decide to take a drama class or a business class or something that's unrelated to criminal justice, and that would be your elective courses. Okay, so you've applied, you've chosen your program of study, and everything's clipping along. And the next step in the process is for you to get accepted. Okay, so acceptance means that you are eligible to enroll in classes, and most colleges and universities will let you know by a letter telling you you have officially been accepted to their school. There are different kinds of schools. There are some schools that have what they call selective admissions, which means they only accept certain students. They don't accept everybody just because they've applied. Whereas open admissions institutions generally find a place for everyone who has a high school diploma or equivalent. West Georgia Technical College is an open admissions school, so you can pretty well count on being able to get in as long as you pass some basic requirements for entrance into college. All right, once you have been accepted, then you begin the process of enrolling in classes. In the modern world, this happens almost exclusively online. You're going to be given a time or a date or a schedule when you're eligible to go online, and some information from the college about how to go through the process of enrolling in classes. You're going to search by semester, and then you're going to search by the field, like criminal justice or cosmetology or whatever, and you're going to look for courses in that particular semester in your particular field, and you're going to start with the ones that they suggest you start with. And again, I'll talk with you in a different presentation about how to go through that process. But it's when you've actually enrolled in classes and begun paying your tuition that you are actually a college student. You can get through the process of applying and being accepted and still not be a college student. You're not obligated until you really start paying bills. All right, think about how to apply for your courses. Usually, you will be able to find something called a sequencing sheet that tells you the sequence that you should take classes in. But I will just give you some idea of some terms that you may run into when you're looking at what classes that you should sign up for. In general, the number on the class indicates how difficult the class is. For instance, any course that begins with a 1 and is therefore a 1,000 level class is typically considered a freshman class or a first-year student class, whereas 2,000 level courses are the ones that are the next level up. They're a little harder, a little bit more challenging. They assume you've learned something in a 1,000 level class to be prepared to take a 2,000 level class, and then so on and so forth. Those 3,000 and 4,000 level classes you won't encounter unless you go to a 4-year college typically. All right, so if there are some classes that you must take before you take another class, that's called a prerequisite. And there's an example I've given you here. You have to take English 1101, for instance, before you can take English 1102. And not only must you take it, but you must pass it at a C or better level in order to be prepared to do that. Those would be your freshman level classes if you were in a degree program in any college or institution in the state of Georgia. Then, after you've passed those two, if you're going on with a 4-year degree in particular, you'll be required to take a 2,000 level or a sophomore level English class as well. And that would be a bare minimum for getting a 4-year degree in the state of Georgia. Likewise, if you're pursuing a more technical field of study, for instance, like automotive technology, you must take Auto Tech 1010 and 1020 before you can take any of the other Auto Tech classes. So when you're trying to sign up for Auto Tech 1030, you'll see that it says that 1010 and 1020 are prerequisites. Occasionally, you'll find classes listed as co-requisite, and that typically means that those classes are designed to be taken in tandem in the same semester, side by side. For instance, you may find it very helpful to take the 1010 and the 1020 class in the same semester because those two classes sort of comment on one another and they work together to bring you to the level you need to be to take the next kind of class. All right, the other thing you need to be aware of is something called credit hours. You'll see that most classes that you want to sign up to take are listed as a 1-hour class or a 2-hour or 3 or 4-hour class. And what that typically means traditionally was that was how much time you spent in that class each week. So that the idea is that a 3-hour class is a class that you take for 3 hours for that week. Now, that doesn't mean that's how long it takes you to work on that class. That's simply how much time you're spending in the classroom. So, for instance, a 4-hour class will usually take up realistically at least 12 hours of your time each week because you're going to spend a lot of time outside of the classroom preparing for the class. That means reading chapters, doing homework, watching video lectures, just a whole host of things that you may be required to do outside the classroom. But you should expect to spend about 3 hours. Now, that's not really 100% true because, for instance, most 1-hour class sessions really only meet for 50 minutes because they have to allow you some time between class slots to move from one class to another. And so typically it's not quite 3 hours. The other thing that is a big exception is a lot of times a lab course will actually take a lot more than 3 hours per week in class. For instance, you can look at the schedule I've got in the box here, and I have an example of a 3-hour course may meet for an hour and a half on Tuesdays and an hour and a half roughly on Thursdays. Okay, and so that may be your weekly schedule, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7:45 p.m. A 4-hour class may meet roughly 2 hours twice a week, or maybe a little bit more, as you'll see in this example. And these are real world examples that I pulled off of a West Georgia Technical College course record. And then you'll see that the 3-hour lab meets from 2 to 3:15 on Mondays and Wednesdays, which is a little over an hour twice a week. So, okay, that adds up to about 2.5 hours. But then it meets for the lab portion, which is the hands-on looking through microscopes and that kind of thing. That lab portion meets an additional 3:30 to 6 o'clock on Mondays. So you can see by the time you add all that time together, it meets for more than 4 hours. But you only get the 4 hours credit, the 3 hours for the class and the 1 hour for the lab, even though the lab meets for more than 1 hour. So you can see it's not an exact science, okay? But classes are measured in this way as a way of making it consistent from school to school, so that if you take a 3-hour class at West Georgia Tech and then you want to transfer to the University of West Georgia, they're going to give you the same 3 hours credit for that class that you've taken at the technical college. Okay? Now, just another quick thing that you need to know about credit hours is that's also how you are determined whether or not you're a full-time student or not. Anything less than 12 hours, you are considered a part-time student in that given semester. So if you take roughly 1 to 3 classes in a semester, you're still considered a part-time student. And if you take 12 or more hours, you're considered a full-time student. Now, the reason I mention that is because some kinds of financial aid are based on whether or not you're a full-time student. And the other thing that you might want to consider is that sometimes you get more bang for your buck being a full-time student because a college will cost the same thing for 12 hours as it does 18 hours. Once you get to that 12-hour mark, you're paying for a full tuition, even if you take additional classes beyond that. And that's more in the four-year college world, whereas in the technical college, you're typically paying by the course credit hour, and therefore it doesn't really matter whether you're full or part-time. Another term that you'll need to be familiar with is remediation, and that means a review of some basic skills. Perhaps you're not quite ready to take a college level English class, for instance, and so you may, based on your GED score or an AccuPlacer score or an SAT score, you may be placed into an English 1101 class that has an additional component to it called the English 999 class. Anything less than 1,000 in number is considered not necessarily college credit. You may be offered that class and you may be paying for it as a college class, but it's not really college level work if it's anything less than a 1,000 number. Sometimes it's a separate class, but more often than not these days, it's included sort of as extra work you need to do while you're taking 1,000 level or better. So pay close attention to which level of class that you sign up for. And generally, you don't have to worry about this too much because once you have declared that you're pursuing a particular program of study, like I'm going to get a diploma in criminal justice, it will only let you sign up for classes that fall into that curriculum, okay? But it's good to be aware of exactly what you're signing up for. So for instance, if you want to get some remediation or you need some remediation, you're going to be taking those less than 1,000 level classes. But if you're going to be working on a diploma, you're going to make sure that you sign up for business math or foundations math. But be aware that these classes will not apply toward a degree program later on. You can take instead mathematical modeling, quantitative reasoning, college algebra, etc., if you think you might eventually pursue an associate or a bachelor's degree. Some programs of study are called competitive selection process programs. And these are programs where there are more students interested in being in these programs than there are slots available for students, okay? For instance, radiation technology is a competitive selection process field of study. And so a student must do additional things in order to actually get into the program itself. So you'll start taking classes. You'll see a list of the classes there on that second bullet point, things like Biology 2013, Biology 2014 in its lab, English 1101, Math 1101, or 1111, and Psych 1101. And you have to take all those classes and make a C or better in order to even be considered in the radiation technology program. There's also an application that has to be filled out. Typically, those applications for the next following school year are due by about June 1st. And in the case of radiation technology, you have to also take a standardized test called a health occupations aptitude exam that you're going to be doing a lot of studying for. So be aware that certain fields are going to be really, really tough to get into. In fact, even though the bullet says that you only have to make a C or better in those courses, you really have to make A's because the average grade point average of students accepted into the radiation technology program is 3.7. So those are the people that you are competing against to get your seat in that program. And so I know of students who, if they get a B in biology, will go back and take that same biology class over again to get an A to increase their odds of being able to get into the program. Now that sounds a little extreme. I would think a B is okay, but it is very competitive to get into certain, especially the medical fields. All right, so take these simple steps to become a college student, starting with your application. Submit all those materials that we talked about, plus your financial aid form that we haven't even gotten to yet, separate presentation to be sure to check that out. Then you're going to be accepted from admissions and through financial aid. You'll get some feedback from them. You'll attend orientation. That's a special program that you go to that teaches you what you need to do to be a college student. Then you'll register online for your classes. Then you'll pay for your classes and then begin attending. Also, be very aware that there's something called a payment deadline each semester so that you have to be able to have paid your bill by this date in order to stay in your classes. You can go ahead and do everything else right and get in your classes and be sitting there in your classes for the first week of classes. And then if you don't pay your bill by the end of the first week of classes, you will be dropped from those classes. So don't miss your payment deadline. And again, there are ways to set up a payment schedule and things like that, but that is the topic for another day. So best of luck, and remember that the West Georgia Technical College staff members are here to help. So don't be afraid to ask.